I never knew I married a ghost. In a quiet village surrounded by vast fields and ancient trees, an old woman named Nneka lived alone. She had once been full of life, a proud mother, but for the past 8 years, she had carried the unbearable grief of losing her only son, Chijioke. His death had left a void in her heart, one that time refused to heal. The villagers spoke of him in hushed tones, his memory slowly fading like footprints washed away by rain. But in 2007, something happened that brought his name back to every tongue, an event that left the entire village shaking. A woman named Adeze arrived in the village, holding the hands of her 3 children, 1 boy and 2 girls. She was strikingly beautiful, the kind of woman who turned heads effortlessly, but her beauty was accompanied by a look of expectation. Excitement gleamed in her eyes. She had been waiting for this moment for years, the moment she would finally meet her husband's family. For 7 long years, she had pleaded with Chijioke to take her to his village. Every year, he promised. Every year, he found an excuse. Next year, he would say, "We will go next year." At first, she had believed him. Then, she began to doubt. But finally, he agreed. Their life in the city had been filled with love, or so she thought. Chijioke was a devoted husband and a caring father, but there were always strange things about him. He never spoke about his past, avoided deep conversations about his family, and whenever she brought up visiting his village, he would change the subject. Sometimes, she would wake up at night to find him sitting by the window, staring into the darkness, as if he was listening to something only he alone could hear. And then there were the dreams, nightmares, really, where he would wake up drenched in sweat, mumbling words she could not understand. The journey was filled with joy. The children chattered about meeting their grandmother for the first time. Adeze had packed gifts, beautiful wrappers, foodstuffs, and special herbs from the city. She had imagined this day for so long, and now, it was happening. On their way, they stopped at a supermarket in the state capital to buy last-minute gifts for Chijioke's mother. He carefully selected the best items, inspecting each one with deep thoughtfulness. But then, something strange happened. As they prepared to leave, Chijioke deliberately placed the bag of his mother's gifts in a corner and walked out without it. They boarded a bus, heading straight for the village. Then suddenly, Chijioke clapped his hands against his thighs, his face filled with regret. "Adeze, I forgot Mama's present in the supermarket." She turned to him, concern in her eyes. "Should we go back?" she asked. "No," he replied quickly. "You and the children go ahead. I will return to get it and join you later. Just tell them I sent you." Adeze hesitated. "Are you sure?" she asked again. "Yes, my love. I will be there soon. Just follow the directions I gave you." He gave her precise instructions. Every turn, every landmark, down to the very last detail. It was almost as if he had memorized the village perfectly. Trusting him, Adeze agreed. She boarded the next available bus with her children, her heart racing with anticipation. She was finally going to meet his family. She imagined his mother welcoming her with open arms, his relatives rejoicing at the sight of his children. But what she found instead was something she could have never imagined. The moment she arrived, confusion filled the air. The villagers stopped in their tracks to stare at her. Women whispered among themselves. Men exchanged worried glances. The children, oblivious to the tension, played around joyfully. Adeze, still smiling, approached an elderly woman sitting on a wooden stool under a large mango tree. "Good afternoon, Mama. My name is Adeze. I am Chijioke's wife. He sent me ahead while he went to retrieve something he forgot in the city." The elderly woman gasped. Others drew closer. A young man rushed off, and moments later, an old woman emerged from one of the huts. That was Nneka, Chijioke's mother. Her frail body trembled as she laid eyes on Adaeze and the children. She studied their faces, her lips quivering. "My daughter, who did you say you are looking for?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Chijioke, my husband," Adaeze repeated. "He said I should come ahead while he returns to get a forgotten item. He will be here soon." Nneka let out a piercing wail and collapsed to the ground. The villagers rushed to her, their faces filled with horror. Adaeze felt a cold chill crawl up her spine. She looked around, confused. "What is happening?" she demanded, her voice shaky. A village elder stepped forward. "My daughter, Chijioke died 8 years ago." Adaeze laughed, a nervous, desperate laugh. "No, no, no. That is impossible. I left him in the city a few hours ago. He is coming soon." "He is not coming," the elder said solemnly. "Your husband has been dead for 8 years." Adeze's hands trembled. "No, it cannot be. We have been married for 7 years. He is the father of my children." She turned to the villagers. Tell them they are mistaken." But there was only silence. A deafening silence. To prove it to her, Nneka brought out a small wooden box. Inside were old pictures. She pulled out one and held it up. Adeze's heart stopped. Her hands shook as she took the picture and stared at it. It was Chijioke, her husband, her children's father. Her knees gave way, and she crumpled to the ground. Her mind raced. How could this be? How had she lived with a man who had died years before she even met him? The memories flashed through her mind. His reluctance to visit the village, his avoidance of family discussions, his strange silences at times. The puzzle pieces were coming together, forming an image too terrifying to accept. She wailed. She screamed. Her children clung to her, confused, frightened. The villagers shook their heads in sorrow. They had seen strange things, but this was beyond anything they had ever known. For days, Adaeze remained in the village, waiting. She sat at the entrance of the compound, eyes fixed on the dusty road, convinced he would return. But he never did. Reality slowly settled in. She had married a ghost, a wandering soul who had walked among the living, loved as the living did, but was never truly alive. As days passed, the villagers did what they could for her. Some believed she had been under a spell. Others said Chijioke's spirit had unfinished business. But Adaeze knew the truth now. And she knew that no matter how much she waited, no matter how much she longed for him to return, but he never would. Conclusion. The fate of Adaeze and her children. Days turned into weeks, and the reality of her situation settled deep into Adeze's soul. She had married a spirit, born children for a man who had long departed from the land of the living. But what now? What future awaited her and the innocent children who had no part in this mystery? The village elders convened, and after long deliberation, they decided that Adaeze and her children must undergo cleansing rituals. They believed that her union with Chijioke's spirit had placed her in an uncertain state, neither fully belonging to the living nor the dead. The rituals were meant to sever any lingering spiritual ties and protect her and her children from any misfortune. The process was long and exhausting. Sacrifices were made, prayers were chanted, and traditional rites were performed. The village's chief priest warned that if these steps were not taken, Chijioke's spirit might return to claim them. After the rites, Nneka, the mother of the deceased Chijioke, made a heartfelt decision. Despite her initial shock, she could not ignore the bond she felt with the children. They were, after all, her blood. She insisted they stay in the village, under her care. But Adaeze was torn. The city was her home, and her life had been built there. Could she truly stay in a place filled with memories of a man she now knew was never really alive? After much thought, she decided to return to the city, but she left the eldest child, a boy, with Nneka to be raised in the village, ensuring that Chijioke's lineage remained connected to his roots. The two girls, still too young to understand the depth of their mother's pain, left with her. Back in the city, Adeze's life was never the same. Rumors spread, and many people distanced themselves from her, afraid of what had happened. Some whispered that she had been cursed, that she had unknowingly been trapped in a world between the dead and the living. Finding love again was nearly impossible. Who would dare marry a woman who had once been a ghost's wife? Yet, despite the pain, she persevered. She dedicated her life to raising her children, ensuring they never lacked anything. She worked harder than ever, determined to give them a future free from the shadows of their past. As the years passed, she visited the village often, watching her son grow strong under his grandmother's care. Though she never saw Chijioke again, she sometimes dreamed of him, standing at a distance, watching, but never speaking. Perhaps he was still there, lingering, watching over them. Or perhaps he had finally found peace, knowing that his family was safe. Adeze never truly understood why fate had chosen her for such an extraordinary experience. But one thing was certain: she would never forget the man she loved, the man who was never meant to be hers in the land of the living. And so, life moved on. Painful, mysterious, but ever moving forward.